This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 268 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. This one's about danger. Well, it's about finding yourself in danger on your travels. But spoiler alert, all of my guests survive. I mean, obviously, or they wouldn't really be able to be guests. But not only that, situations that could have been, quite tricky and very dangerous, as often happens, turned out to be not so bad. That's not to say that we shouldn't be cautious and wary on our travels, but it is, I think, a good reminder that a lot of the things we worry about happening when we're travelling actually, well, it probably pays to worry a little bit, but not too much, because a lot of the time things don't work out as we worry they will. So, to kick us off, I'm chatting first with Jess Stone. So she told me about a recent motorbike trip in Mexico with her husband and their dog, Moxie.
We had done a trip to Mexico, and we were looking for a national park, a specific national park that was outside of Mexico City, probably about like 30 kilometers. And it turned into a dirt road. We were riding along. Google was telling us to go a certain way, and we were trying to follow it, but Google screwed us up in that sense, and we didn't end up finding our destination. So it was starting to get dark. It was sunset, and we try not to ride in the dark just for safety reasons. And we knew that we were going to camp. The whole point was we were going to go to this national park, and we were going to camp there and spend the night. But when we noticed that it wasn't going to happen for us, we decided to turn around, and we decided let's look for a wild camping spot. And that's something we do pretty frequently here in Central America and Mexico, is just pulling off on the side of the road in a place that looks secure enough where we can camp for the night. As we were riding back from when we turned around, we had noticed on the side the area that we were riding in was all farmland. So there were places that were fenced off, and they had animals, and they were also doing some agriculture. And on one of the sides, all of a sudden something caught my eye, and I saw that there was this man walking around, and he had a pistol in his hand. And I thought, why is he carrying a gun in like farmland? Like normally you'll see guys with machetes because they're using that to hack things down. And on the rare occasion where you do see somebody with a gun, normally it's a rifle, but not like a pistol. And it caught my eye because the sun glinted off it. And I was like, what is that? And I asked my husband on the communicator that we have where we can talk back and forth. And I said, did you see that? And he goes, what? I said, that guy is like walking around with a pistol. And he said, oh, no, I didn't see it. I was like, okay, fine. So we decided to continue, but it was stuck in my mind that there's like this guy walking around, and this is really odd. So we rode another maybe 15 minutes past him, and then found this really cool spot that had it was like a pine forest, and we were at elevation, and that's for us that's always our favorite thing, because it's normally cooler. It's better for Moxie. She's a shepherd. She likes to be in cool weather. So we thought, okay, this is a great place. And it had like all the nettles on the floor, so we knew it was going to be a nice soft place for camping. So we pulled off. There was a little pull off, and we could see that some other people had been there before. There was some garbage that they left over, so we knew that other people had been here. So we decided to set up our tent, and we went through the whole thing. And by then it was now pretty much dark by the time we got our tent set up. We had our hot chocolate outside, and Moxie was just sort of roaming free. And it got really cold. It was probably now like 5 degrees Celsius, so it got cold. And we decided to turn in early, and it was probably around 8 o'clock. And so we get into the tent, and we're just sort of all bundled there. And then we hadn't been hearing much traffic on this road. It was a dirt road. It was slow. Even when we had gone to try and find the national park, we only passed 1 or 2 cars. So as we were in the tent, a car came by, and we could see see the headlights flashing on our tent, and our tent has some reflective material, so we sort of assumed that they saw us. And so I could hear that they stopped just a little bit further up. And then a man came out and he started yelling something at us. And my initial reaction, okay, I'm not proud of this. My initial reaction was to hide under my sleeping bag. I pulled my sleeping bag up over my head. Like, you can't see me. You can't see me. and then Greg is laying beside me, and like he like gets alert, and Moxie, she gets alert. So she sleeps in the tent with us, and she started, like, she was on high alert. So she starts to bark. We open the tent. Greg jumps out, and Moxie's beside him, and they go up. The guy is still yelling something, but we can't hear it. It was unclear. And I hear Greg and Moxie. They go up towards where this guy is, and Moxie is just barking like crazy at this guy, like there's something wrong. And I still have in my head the guy with the pistol. He was just back there. Is this him? Is he coming to rob us? And we get there. Greg gets there, and I finally pull myself out of the sleeping bag, and I like look out the tent, and Greg goes up to the guy, and in Spanish he's basically saying, "Are you camping?" And then all of a sudden, like, it sort of changed. And Moxie, so Greg got her to heel, so she sat beside him. And the guy was just asking if we were camping here because it might not be safe. And he just wanted to make sure that we were okay, and that everything was everything was fine. And Greg is like trying to like he's trying to kill them with kindness. You know that thing that you do when like somebody is trying to help you and you feel uncomfortable. Yes, he's overcompensating, and he's trying to be like, oh yeah, we're just here and we've got the dog and the what. And meanwhile, it's a group of 4 guys who have like probably been working in the fields all the morning and like the end of the day, and it was a Friday night, and they're probably going to the town to go for a drink, and Greg is there busy trying to like kill them with kindness and trying to like talk to them. Moxie's now finally sitting there like sniffing around them and checking things out, but yeah, and I'm there like peeking out of the tent to make sure that everything is okay after my little freak out. But yeah, it turned out really well. So they were just really just wanted to make sure that we were okay. And Moxie, like she, I think that from what I could see, and what Greg told me later was that when Moxie went and sort of like went to them, the guy like pulled back, because Moxie she's a big dog. She looks really aggressive, that she could potentially bite you. So she really was being the protective shepherd that she is. So so it's just it's nice to have the dog in those situations as well, because then you know that you have like that little bit of added protection, that somebody isn't going to potentially come up to you that quickly because they see that there's this big dog. But I'm glad that they weren't coming to rob us, and that they were just being diligent,
or shoot you,
making sure we were okay. Yeah. Yes.
Oh no, I've done stuff like that before too. You just sort of, start, it's a different, strange place. You don't know really what's going on. You've seen something that makes you suspicious. And I had this time once I was in a train in Vietnam, and it was kind of the middle of the night, and we never really figured out why, but this guy opened up we're in a cabin with 4 bunks in it, and there was 2 of us, and then can't remember if they were empty or other people in it, but no, I think they were empty. And this guy kind of opened the door late at night and threw packages in, and it was just really weird. And I was like, oh my God, are they bombs, or is it drugs, or what is these weird packages, and why are they in my cabin? And you start to like just fantasize these crazy, like, worst case scenarios. And I still to this day don't know what it was, but nothing bad happened. We just got to the next day, we reached our destination and we got off the train. It was fine. But yeah, I totally understand that sometimes that just little bit of paranoia sets in, doesn't it? So Jess's experience in Mexico, similarly to my experience in Vietnam, both turned out to be fine, but we probably had some cause to be worried. I mean, I don't think I did. I think I was just anxious and paranoid. But in any case, things turned out to be completely fine and really nothing had happened. However, with my next guests, I've got Michael and Brent back on, and they have, well, they've had a couple of experiences with fires, and I actually probably need to issue a bit of a content warning. If you're a nervous flyer, you might need to skip ahead 10 minutes and skip the second story that Michael and Brent tell us today. But yeah, let's just say to precursor it that, yeah, this is a case where things were a little bit actually dangerous. But of course, they would live to tell the tale and everything was fine.
Michael and I have a reoccurring problem with fire. The first time we were living in Bulgaria, which is a relatively poor country, but we had a very beautiful apartment, which was a ski chalet, and we'd had some problems with our wiring. An electrician had come in a couple of times. But then one morning we were making breakfast. We finished, we cleaned up, and I smelled smoke. And, we looked around and we hadn't burned the toast and the oven was off. And we opened the window thinking, well, maybe somebody's burning garbage. And we didn't, the air smelled fresh outside and it smelled smoky inside the apartment, which was disconcerting and discombobulating. It's not what you expect. And so we're like, is there a fire? And it's like, let's search the apartment. So we begin going through all the rooms in the apartment. And at one point I opened the door to the bathroom in the back bedroom and the light was off and the entire apartment, which I guess had been smoldering, burst up in flames.
Not the apartment, the bathroom.
The bathroom burst up into flames. I guess the wiring, he tried to fix the wiring. The electrician had tried to fix the wiring a couple times, and he clearly hadn't done it. So the entire bathroom was engulfed in flames, and then smoke instantly fills the apartment. And that's the thing that you don't know about fire, that it's the smoke.
Oh my God.
Because the smoke is this black, evil-looking smoke is everywhere. And I'm like, Michael, the apartment is on fire. And of course, being good nomads, we want to grab our passports and our computers before we leave, even though we're not supposed to do that. And then, of course, my SIM card hadn't been working and we didn't have phone connection at this moment in time because we're bad nomads. And we're looking around for smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, and there aren't any because this is a poor country and there's no fire alarm. There's nothing like that. And I'm yelling. I run out into the courtyard and I'm yelling, help, fire, fire, fire. And because it's an off season, there's nobody around. And a Bulgarian woman came by and she looked at me, and I don't speak Bulgarian and she didn't speak English. And I'm saying, fire, fire, call the fire department. And she just sort of walked on, and I'm still frustrated to this day that she couldn't figure out just from context what was going on.
That something bad was happening, yeah.
But Michael smartly thought, we still had Wi-Fi, and he smartly thought to call our landlord, who called the fire department.
I messaged him through Facebook.
You messaged him through Facebook. So he called the fire department, and he also said, turn off the electrical breaker. Since there's an electrical fire, turn off the electricity, which was very smart. And so that was a little sobering when we realized no smoke detectors, no fire extinguishers, and the landlord told us, he'd been bugging the owners to buy all this stuff, and now he is really, now he's a reason to push them even more. And he was very cool, but it was a little sobering, when you are traveling in some of these poor countries. The risk assessment is a little different. What if it had happened while we were sleeping? Yeah. And now we travel with a portable smoke detector and all of that. And frankly, we still feel safer even in countries like Bulgaria, because when we're in America, we spend most of our time in cars, which is where, you're most likely to be killed, probably, or injured. And that doesn't happen in most other countries. But it was still sobering.
So our second fire story was our second year of nomading. We were on a flight from JFK to Switzerland, where we were going to be spending a month. And about a half hour, 45 minutes into the flight, Brent says, do I smell smoke? And I used to be a flight attendant. So I was like, I sniffed the air and I'm like, oh, I think the flight attendants have overheated dinner, but I think that's all that's going on. And it's like, well, okay, we're not going to worry about it. About 2 minutes later, the flight attendants began rushing up and down the aisle of the airplane, carrying gear and wearing a hood over their head. And by this point, I look up and you can see that there's more smoke in the cabin. And we're sort of looking at each other, kind of going, what's going on? And I'm saying to Brent, it's going to be fine. The flight attendants know what they're doing. Airplanes are designed for this sort of thing. This isn't going to be a big deal.
Keep in mind, this was up in first class, which was very far from where we were sitting.
The fire was up in first class.
The activity was in first class, not you. Very far from where we were. So we had no idea what was going on.
So then the captain comes on, says, ladies and gentlemen, we are having to make an emergency landing. We're diverting to Boston. We're going to be on the ground in about 30 minutes. And meanwhile, everybody is sitting there looking, up the aisle, trying to see what's going on up in first class. And, the haze stays in the air. The flight attendants keep going back and forth, but nothing else happens. And so we start to our descent and we're thinking, okay, we're going to be fine.
You were thinking that. And they were not giving us any information.
They were busy doing other stuff. Brent, he did look at me at one point and said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think you should put your shoes on in case we have to go down the emergency slides, because that is my goodness. But I really wasn't that worried. I didn't think it could be anything that serious. So we land. As we pull up on the runway, there are probably 12 fire trucks out there with their lights spinning and what's going on. And the captain comes on and says, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to a stop. Stay in your seats. Everything's under control, so stay in your seats. We are taking a couple people off. We were having a panic attack. So these couple people were whisked off right away. And then the firemen came on board the plane, up in the front. Make a long story short, as we were leaving the airplane, we went past what had happened was somebody's battery on their phone was recharging, had fallen between the seats. And when they ask you at the airport, do you have any batteries in your luggage that are being checked? You need to be clear that you know exactly where those things are at, because they really can overheat and catch on fire. And we happened to go by the seat that caught on fire, and it was reduced to charred metal. I was amazed. I personally was shocked. I thought something might have smoked a little bit. The whole seat had literally gone up in flames.
Which makes no sense, because isn't everything on a plane fire retardant?
Yeah, but it's fire retardant. You can't. Those things. I did not know those batteries could.
It was an external battery pack.
Yeah, they plugged it in the charge.
Oh my goodness.
We have had some interesting encounters with fire, so we hope the third time doesn't happen.
I also fervently hope that the things come in threes rule doesn't apply to Brent and Michael's experience of fire, because I think they've been through enough with it already. But good lesson in being prepared as well, I guess. And the fire on the plane is kind of, I don't know. Yes, actually it turned out fine, and planes are extraordinarily safe compared to every other mode of transport, really, but I still get a bit nervous. So that story freaked me out a little bit. Anyway, let's move on to my next guest. And my next guest is Helena Fox. And she has a story which I think is really common to many women who travelled in their 20s, who sometimes travelled alone. I know something similar happened to quite a few of my friends. Well, fortunately not to me. But it was one of those cases where, things could have been dangerous, probably were dangerous in some senses. But spoiler alert, as I said right at the top, things turned out okay, but it's still a good story.
I was traveling around Europe. I was doing the backpacker thing. I was 24. And I had intended to go backpacking with a friend, but within a week it was clear that that would not be the best person for me to backpack with. And so I ended up taking off and doing my own thing. And I backpacked by myself around Europe for over 3.5 months. And it was all pretty good. But there was this one day where I was in the south of France, and I was going to take the train to Florence. And there's kind of a notorious stretch of like the south of France along that southern Italian coast, where they say if you catch the night train, that's no good, because there's a lot of people trying to rob you on that train. So I remember thinking, I won't take the night train. That would be dangerous for a girl on her own. So I resolved to take the day train. And then there was this Irish fella who I met who said, this will save you money. If you take the night train, you won't have to pay for accommodation. I'll go with you. And I was like, all right. Well, lo and behold, he did not show up. And suddenly I was going on the night train by myself, which was already just terrifying, but I had no other option. I had no other place to stay because I'd checked out of my accommodation. So I got on the night train, And I remember thinking, I have to find some people to travel with. I'm going to have to find some companions here, because I know that there was this story, and it is true that they put gas into the cabins. They drug you. They take your money. So I got off. There was a little break at Nice, I think it was. And I got out of my carriage and just searched up and down. And I just was walking up and down. And I met these 3 American women, 2 or 3 American women. I think it was 3 of us. And I was like, I just went, hi, can I travel with you? And so we got ourselves into our cabin, and we padlocked our backpacks to our bodies, and we padlocked them also to things in the train carriage. And so we started riding, and you could see the people walking up and down looking for who to rob. So it was really late at night, and we were looking, and we were looking out the window and going, wow. And then this man got in our carriage. And I don't know what the rating is of your podcast, but this man in the carriage did not behave well.
In an appropriate manner.
It was a lewd act he performed in the carriage with 3 girls, and it was terrifying. It was terrifying because it was pitch black, and you could tell he was doing something not right.
Gosh.
And when he got off, thank God he got off, and he didn't in fact touch us, but we were all of us just tensed up like this. And we went, did you see? Yes, I saw. Oh my God. So there we were, just freaking out. And I don't know how we got to the other side of that, but at 3 a.m. we stopped in Genoa, and the girls were going somewhere else, and my connecting train didn't come. So it was not only had I survived that experience and the man on the carriage and the people potentially wanting to drug us in our room with our padlocks,
everything padlocked to you and to the train.
Now I was completely on my own in Genoa at the train station with nobody to be with. And there was a lot of very sadly, there were a lot of homeless men sleeping on that platform. So I remember going to the police. There was a little police box, and I said, could I please come in? And they said, there's no room in here. I don't know how we communicated, but there was no room in their little police box. So from 3 a.m. till I think 9 a.m, I sat on these cold stone steps of this police space, just wide awake, checking that nothing was going to happen to me. And that's how I got through that night.
Wow.
And in the end, everything was fine. And I was thinking about what got me through it. And I found other people to be with. I stayed completely alert. I got the information that I needed to know what the danger was, so I didn't just go blindly into it. And I just made sure that I was surrounded as much as I could with people who I could trust to keep, at least we were in a pod,
Yes,
as much
yes.
as we could to stay safe.
Yeah.
And when I told my mum, the other thing about that was it was a long time ago. It was before cell phones. It was before any kind of internet. So when I went backpacking through Europe for 3.5 months, my mum was reliant completely on me calling to know that I was safe and alive. So you can imagine what she thought when she heard that I had that experience. So it's really interesting how you don't intend to put yourself in danger, but suddenly there you are in danger. And, potentially we could have still been gassed, and potentially that man could have tried to do harm to us. And it's thing of just feeling quite lucky, feeling very grateful for not, thank goodness I wasn't on my own, and thank goodness I found people. And so it's one of those things of like, oh, danger was there, and it went, okay, I'm going to go close, and then I'm going to move on by. And it's that feeling of, oh, that was a bit scary.
So, as promised, everyone came through these dangerous situations alive. And of course, travel is never risk-free, but staying at home is not risk-free either. So I think we often blow our worries about being in a strange place out of proportion. And as several of these stories demonstrated, most people are good people who will actually help you. Very, very few bad people out there. But do watch out for fire. So a huge thanks to all my guests for sharing their stories of danger on their travels. I started out chatting with Jess of GoRuffly.com. That's GORUFFLY. Jess sells ethical outdoor dog gear. It's actually kind of cool. And she travels everywhere with her dog. So it all makes sense. I then chatted with Brent and Michael of BrentandMichaelAreGoingPlaces.com. Lots of great stuff there, digital nomads wandering the world and worth following for sure. And lastly, I chatted with Helena Fox. You can find more about her work at helenafoxauthor.com. She's, as the website says, an author, and she has a YA book out, How It Feels to Float, which I have personally read and loved. Don't forget to come along and join our groups on Facebook. It's just Thoughtful Travellers. Search for that in Facebook. On LinkedIn, also called Thoughtful Travellers, but easiest to find by going to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. I've got lots of cool plans for those groups this year, so get in and see what we're going to do. And of course, the show notes for this episode, which will include those links, are at notaballerina.com/268. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.